What's the process? We had a comment at the beginning of the meeting for bringing to the list of projects that Reuben Brown would consider under our next phase of our contract, whether or not that includes an audit of solid waste. So that question, I asked that question at the Finance Audit Advisory Committee meeting this morning, and they said that I think Mr. Liu said council makes those determinations. Maybe I misunderstood, but we have had a request about solid waste being the subject of a subsequent or our next Reuben Brown audit.
Can you remind me what was on our latest agreement that we had? I don't think you get into the specifics, did it?
So it's just twofold. So for something like this, if that's an audit that council would like for us to embark on, it would take a motion and an agreement from council to move forward on that project.
Is that a motion that we make this evening?
Yes, I would like to have a, I'd like to review what we've already asked Reuben Brown to do and where we are. Have we finished the last performance
Yes.
audit that we asked them for? So
From
now we're ready to start a new one?
we are. So there are a couple of audits that from a staff perspective that we've asked for. They're starting to look at. So one was to look at our bus system. I want to, if we're actually going to embark on looking at transit, I want them to do an audit of our transit system to see if there's some issues or concerns that we need to know before we hire a consultant to look at the system. We're also introducing a new way of doing our payroll system. And so I'd like for them to look at, before we introduce a new system, and in that process to make sure that there are no bugs or no issues with that. Those are things that they're going to start this month in February, start January and February. And those are real small, quick audits that should take, a couple of months. And so if the council would like for us to embark on looking at the solid waste system, we'd have to reach out to them and see their time frame for it. But most likely they would start probably around March or April.
Would it make sense to wait until the current conversation ends? Because I know we're also doing a comprehensive recycling study.
Yes.
And I'm trying to look, so we approved the Reuben Brown contract on our last city council meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was trying to bring up the projects that you just mentioned. So Pat, I don't know if you want to wait until we have this, since they're starting on the few projects that he just mentioned, and then bring it back up in a couple of months, or ask or call it a question.
If the council votes on it, then we can put it on their calendar, and we can let you know exactly when they'll be able to start that at the next meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to ask that we put it on their calendar. I got an indication this morning that it was one of the areas for future examination, but nobody knew that there was, this morning anyway, that there was already a plan in place to get underway. So I would like to recommend and ask that we put that on for future calendar, whatever order in which they're taking those two other topics.
What are we looking for?
Well, hold on. So we have a motion to add to the project list, or a request for the project list for them to do the audit of, and what is it, right, of solid waste.
Solid waste. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, but that's operation, I mean, landfill, that's a lot of the pieces. Do we have a second for this? Before discussion? Yeah.
Second.
Okay, so a second. So the motion is for adding to the performance contract, the projects for review of solid waste. What questions do we have of the motion on?
So what exactly are we examining?
All the operations in solid waste, just as we have examined in prior performance audits.
We're having a whole discussion ongoing about those operations. I mean, it's all kind of up for debate right now.
It is, but we don't have any data or reference point for financial information about its sustainability. We've also talked about there might be a rate increase, there might not be a rate increase. The last I heard, if we didn't buy the bags, but we leased the trucks, then the increase in what a automated collection system would cost was something in the neighborhood of $350,000. So we had a request from the public today. A member of the public suggested that we put that in the list of performance audits to be conducted as part of our relationship with Reuben Brown.
I just think all of those operations are, I mean, all of those questions are legitimate and part of the discussion about what kind of system we're going to have or move toward or change or not change. But that's part of the discussion about what we want to do and what the community wants to do. I mean, in terms of audit, seems like we just spend some number of months auditing something that that is just about to change. And then what I just don't see the value that would bring to us when we're in the middle of this whole discussion about the whole system.
So I heard that we needed a rate increase, and then I heard in order to keep the solid waste viable. And then I heard that we didn't need a rate increase. And I think that confusion is part of what's driving the request from the community. We had a member of the public ask us today for an audit of solid waste.
I think it's perfectly reasonable to have a conversation about it, especially when the public has asked us about it. But simply because one person has asked us to do that, I don't know that that means that we should embark upon doing that. We should think about it, we should reflect on it to see whether it's something that we want to do. But we're already in the middle of looking at this and changing our trash system, and I have not heard anything about a rate increase. I'm sure people are concerned about it. It sounded to me like we were able to, if we go to an automated system, which I think is inevitable, but I don't know that for sure, that the Public Works Department or the Solid Waste Department has already evaluated what they would need to do, and did not hear anything about a rate increase. Either way, we're in the middle of an entire overhaul of the Solid Waste Department, and this seems like a time not to do an audit because, well, what are we going to learn from that?
And let's go ahead and call it a question just before, because we
Let's
go back
call
and forth.
question.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
Sheila, will you call roll on the motion on whether or not to do an audit of solid waste at this time?
Mr. Lovelady?
No.
Mr. Foster?
No.
Mr. Pitzer?
No.
Ms. Peters?
No?
Ms. Buffalo?
No.
Ms. Fowler?
Yes.
Ms. Weiner?
No. Right, motion fails.